Today's episode features a conversation with Joey Vara. Joey has worked as a coach, as a trainer, an athletic director, and he's even done a lot with videography and photography in the world of athletics. He's got a lot of good insight on how we can use athletics to reach our community, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. My name is Luke Clayton, and welcome to the Must Increase podcast. That for me is another reason why use media to get people excited about, your athletic programs there at a school or a church or a ministry in general, because that's how they're used to connecting to it. And so I think that's a good transition point for us to kind of move into talking about, you talk about the importance of athletics, and, you want to have a balanced approach in a ministry. Sure, you do. You don't want, we've all heard the horror stories or maybe experienced it ourselves of, the little league parent who just comes off the bench and goes crazy and whatever. And I've actually, hey, no, here it is. I'm not going to tell the story right now, but true story. I have been ejected from a church league softball game. True story. It happened. Maybe I'll tell it some other time.
You definitely have to tell that, man.
Yeah. I mean, it was, anyways, it happens. But we, so we hear those horror stories, and I say, hey, and I think that's where you talk about the higher ups, those in administration or maybe lead pastors, those that are kind of calling the shots on the highest level. I know from my experience, that's a lot of time what they're concerned about. They say, well, we just don't want, people to get so consumed with athletics that they forget about, obviously the academic side of things, and most importantly, the spiritual side of things, and they lose their testimony and things like that. So, you're an athletic director, you've been a coach. I think I'd like to hear your kind of thoughts on how do we take that balanced approach, and like you said, take advantage of the sports that students want to be involved with, and use that in a way that, yes, it develops godly character and teamwork and understanding all these principles, life principles, but also doing it from balanced approach to where, we're all still Christian here,
Absolutely. And man, I feel like there's so many, just with that question, I feel like you can go so many different directions with it. And the reason why I say that is because I've been in a few different places, and, each place has their own culture already established, or you could say lack of it. And everyone's in a different position, depending on even, what city you live in. So, I would, I guess from just a general standpoint, I mean, obviously at the end of the day, the Lord has to become number one. I totally agree and get that. And that's what it should be. At the end of the day, you should be pleasing the Lord with what you're doing. Now I've been in a couple of different situations where, even just here, where we've been at, starting my second year, we weren't going to have anybody to even have a basketball team. The school is so small. So we had to end up finding people that would want to come and be a part of the program. So that's just one scenario where, we were at. Another scenario that I was in whenever I was, back in Florida, where there was plenty of people. It was just that they needed more, coming from the coaches and, from everything else, from just needed time to be spent with them, needed people to be in their lives, like showing them every single day, hey, we're going to be here for you. We're going to push you. We're going to love you. And at the end of the day, all of this is for one reason, and that's to help build you guys into the young people that you should become. And that's where it comes, what I mentioned earlier, to whom much is given, much is required. If you were in a place, if you were in a school that you're not giving, these kids, a good athletic experience, or, even just, money to be able to run the programs and those type of things, to me, that's not pleasing the Lord, because we're not giving these young people what they need. But so that's what I'm saying. I feel like you can go a lot of different directions in this, because, to anybody that's listening, everyone's in a different position.
Yeah.
And so you've got to figure out, okay, where are we at? Obviously, where do we want to get to? But if you have a lack of people wanting to come to your school and you look at your athletic program's dead, there's, they kind of work together,
Hmm.
from my experiences that I've seen. So you do have to build some of the excitement. You do have to get on, that's why media is such a huge part of this, because if you're not telling your story, somebody else is.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
so I think, all those things, that's what I'm saying. You can go a lot of different directions here. Ultimately, the heart has to be, yes, we want to please the Lord with what we're doing. Now, I feel like that's going to look differently in different places, just depending on, like I said, where you live. Like, we're here in Raleigh right now, dude. We've got 15, if not more, other private schools that kids
Hmm.
get to choose where they want to get to go to. And a lot of those other places have more money than we do. They may have better teachers than we do. We have to find, a reason why we would want people to want to be able to come here. um but at the same times, every school has their differences too. What type of kids you're going to allow in your school? Is it going to be open enrollment? Is it going to be closed enrollment?
Hmm.
So, another part of this I would definitely say is, starting a youth program. Like I'm talking about, K-5, first grade, second grade. You've got to start those kids when they're little.
Hmm.
If you don't, you'll get over here to where it is going to be dead on the high school end, and you are going to have a small school, and kids are maybe not going to be looking to want to come there, for athletics. So now your athletes either end up leaving or they go to another school that does a better job of, one, promoting their athletics, number two, giving more to their athletics. And so those are some reasons why people are going to want to end up going to different places. Like I said earlier, you've been kicked out, you've been kicked out of a softball game. People get revved up. People get emotional when it comes to sports for whatever reason. We've all heard the phrase, sports, builds character.
Hmm.
I think it does build character, but more than anything, it reveals your character first.
Wow. Yeah.
But I think you also can build it, but I think it reveals it first. So using sports as a tool to be able to teach life lessons.
Hmm.
Last thing I'll say is this: like, we started a little Eagles program here about 3 years ago, and so right now, every week, I'm spending about an hour with our fourth through sixth grade boys. Um, 2 weeks ago, we had a problem where, well, we started playing three on three. We showed some video. We showed them, hey, here's a spacing that we want to look for. Here's how we're going to play unselfishly. We're going to be passing the basketball. We're going to cut. When someone does something well, we're going to give them a high five. So we're teaching them life lessons. Well, during that time, they were playing three on three, and I want to say about three or four different kids, got mad at each other because the kid made a bad pass or he messed up, and it was really easy for these kids, fourth through sixth grade boys, to hop onto each other not in the right way.
Yeah.
The Bible says, "Iron sharpeneth iron." So there's a way that you can approach people about stuff, but there's also a way that you can't. And so these kids, as fourth through sixth grade young men, they were going about it not the right way. Now, is that fully their fault? I don't believe so. I believe we have to teach them, this is how you let him know, hey, you messed up. But that's not how you come to him. You tell him, hey, man, listen, dude, we all mess up. It's all good. You got the next one. So we
Hmm.
stopped it right there. We let them know, hey, here's how we do this. We want to be encouraging at the same time that we want to get a point across. But the way they get a point across is not by tearing people down. That's not how we should approach this. That's not how Christ would approach this. So then, to me, the next part was the best part, and that was, well, how do we correct this now?
Hmm.
We talked about it. So I told them, listen, I'm gonna give everybody 1 minute right now, to where if you approach somebody wrongly, like, or just went about it in the wrong way, and if God has put that on your heart that you need to go talk to them and let them know, now's your time to make that right.
Hmm.
And we had about three different kids go over to a different kid and be like, hey man, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, you got the next one, man, let's go. And it was really cool to see, because here you have fourth through sixth grade boys, that we're there for basketball. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we're really there to teach them character and life lessons and really how to become a champion. And that's not
Mm,
just on the court, but also off the court. So
yeah.
to me, that's probably one of the biggest things within, athletics, that we can do is start them young and teach them these lessons when they're young. So that way, by the time when they are older and they are in the high school side of things, they know the correct way to act. They know what they need to do. They know how to be a team. They know how to be unselfish. And so what that's going to do, you do the hard work over here. By the time they're over here, now these guys are the one leading all the rest of everybody behind them.
Yeah.
So to me, I think that's probably one of the best ways that you can go about that. But that's just my own
Yeah.
personal opinion.
No, no, and that's great. And I love going back to what you said about how that really stuck out to me. Sports and athletics doesn't just build character; it first reveals character. And really, if you think about it, in the life of a young person, whether they start playing sports in high school, junior high, middle school, or maybe even younger, as you're talking about, that's probably going to be some of the first times that these kids experience some type of stress in terms of I know that there are kids who go through a lot of bad stuff. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is universally true. Kids go through emotional problems at home, and I get that. I'm talking about the stress of, first of all, it's physically exhausting. You get into the second, third quarter even of a basketball game, and you've been running up and down the court. You're sweating, you're tired, you're fatigued. You've got to work through that. But it's also this. There are these rules that you have to keep in mind. You have to dribble. You can't travel. You've got these certain. You can't foul. You've got to be careful. You've got these rules, and you've got to balance all that. You've got other people to keep in mind. You've got four other players that you've got to keep in mind, and you've got plays that you're trying to remember. In the moment, it becomes kind of it's a stressful situation. You're down. You need to, the game's neck and neck. You need to pull away and take the win. And so because of that, like you said, the character gets revealed because now you're under some type of pressure, and it's the first time many of these kids will experience that maybe that type of pressure and stress. And so I like how you said that about how it reveals character. It's so true. And here's something I like about this conversation overall, and I have some kind of maybe follow-up thoughts and questions with it. This is the first time on this podcast where we've really talked about this angle of sports in general, sports media. But so we our audience is going to be people that a lot of church leaders and guys, pastors maybe that have churches, but maybe they don't have a Christian school. And so my first kind of follow-up and thought here is, would you tell these guys, okay, obviously starting a Christian school, that can be a lot. Most churches don't ever go that route, but starting what you talked about, a youth program for sports, I feel is something in the kind of in the purview of many churches out there, not all. You have to have right, maybe facilities and connections and things like that. But I don't know, what would be your maybe approach if there was a pastor or somebody who said, hey, I've never done this before, we're just looking to start something. What advice would you give them as far as maybe just practical, like, here's how to go about, making that happen?
I gotcha. So, if they don't have a school or something like that, then, maybe if they're just using it for outreach, definitely I would probably try to find somebody that is in the church, that's passionate about sports, that loves kids, that just wants to make a difference, and just try to talk with them. Hey, are you interested at all in, helping build a little bit of an outreach program, for kids? I think, different ages, you're going to probably have a better shot at. I know different churches, do the upward programs. I think, that's
Mm,
excellent. Um, I know even we've done it here before. But I think, it goes back to what we talked about, earlier, every place is so different, man, you know,
yeah.
just from, the city, from the people that are in it, even just within the church, how many people you have maybe willing to help out. Um, I remember whenever I was back at West Coast, we used to do this, especially my freshman and sophomore year. But I think it was like Tommy, John, Danny, and I. Like we Eric McKay was another one. We'd go out, to just different basketball courts on Saturdays,
Hmm.
Right after zoning or as a part of zoning, and there'd be, kids there and they're playing basketball and we'd ask, hey, can we play? And um, Glenn would be doing all these and one moves,
Nice.
Eric was shooting, John was doing all this crazy dribbling and stuff. And so it was your way of connecting with these kids, And so we would try to make a deal with them. Hey, man, like if we beat you, you got to come to church on Sunday,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
just kind of joking around and stuff like that. And it was just our way of connecting with them. And, many times, those kids would end up coming,
Hmm.
and kids would end up getting saved that way. So to me, that was a very easy way. Now, all of us were in college. We all had a little extra time on our hands on Saturday. We loved playing basketball anyways. We were just doing something we loved to do. Back then we were all in shape, so it was, at that time it was good for us. You know what I mean? Um, I would probably say when I went to Pensacola, I did that a few times. But I think that right there is a quick, easy one. It's not even anything you have to do out of your church or at your church. You can literally just go to courts and just want to start playing with them, and that's just basketball. But I do know if there's another pastor, I can't think of his name right now. I saw him post about it the other day, and he was asking for prayer. They were going to do their first 3-on-3 event,
Hmm.
and it was going to be through the church. I don't think they had a Christian school, and so they had just put on a 3-on-3 event. They had all these people come together within the church, and they were utilizing basketball in this 3-on-3 event as a way to be able to reach people, feed the kids, let them have some fun, and then at the end of it, end up opening the gospel and sharing with them for a few minutes.
Hmm.
Here's what you got to do to be saved. We
Yeah.
love the game, but we love you guys. It's just the presence showing them that, hey, we love you, we care about you, we're interested in what you're interested in, and then they have a reason to want to come and be a part of what you got going on. One more thing I would probably mention is I loved how Lancaster Baptist did this, and it was a couple years after I think we had left or we had graduated. But they did this campaign called the Love Works campaign. Do you remember
Yep.
that? Did you ever hear
Oh
that?
yeah. Yep.
Oh man, that was so cool that I saw. I know I think one of their groups, I believe, went to a local high school football game. They painted their faces, they made all these signs. And but before the game, they, fed the whole team. I don't know if it was just the home
Hmm.
team or if it was both the teams. It may have just been the home team. And then, they had all these church members, go wearing pretty much the same shirt, Love Works, um, fed the kids. Then at the game, like they're cheering their heads off for him, going crazy for him, and so all these kids are like, man, who are these guys? You know what I mean? Well, they're from Lancaster Baptist Church.
Yeah.
And so from what I remember, if I remember this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you know the story, but a lot of those kids on Sunday ended up coming to church because they showed, these people showed an interest in them and didn't know who
Hmm.
they were,
Hmm.
and they wanted to know more, like, why did they do that? Who are these
Yeah.
people? And so because they showed the interest, at the end of the day, showed value, they wanted to come and see what they were all about. And that was a way for them to connect. So to me, those are some really easy ways. If you're going to bring value to somebody else, and if you do something and without expecting anything in return, just automatically, man, they're going to have questions. They're going to want
Yeah.
to know, why would you do this for me? And they're going to want to know more about you. And I'll say one more thing on this with the whole graphic design stuff that I've been trying to build here as of late. Um, there was a guy that I was friends with who was an agent, um, and years ago, I was kind of a little bit more in that world, um, and so there was a guy on our team. I played on the ABA team for slightly for like a year, and there was a guy that was really good in our team, and I was the one to put him in touch with this guy, and so that's the only way I kind of knew him was through Facebook. And so, like we had talked, a little bit, but this is probably like 8 or 9 years ago. Well, I kind of looked him up the other day, and now he's got a lot of NBA clients, kind of like as his guys.
Hmm.
And looked at his social media, kind of noticed that he really social media wise, he really wasn't doing a whole lot, wasn't doing it at a high level. And so what I did was I probably spent about 4 or 5 hours one evening whenever the kids went to bed, creating a template, and then putting him on it and I just threw it to him. It was in the summertime. It was almost a year ago. And I threw it to him, and he responded really quickly and was like, "Man, that's fire. Thank you so much." Then he starts asking me questions like, "What'd you do this for? Like, why'd you do this for me?" And so we ended up having a phone conversation that next day. And well, he told me this. He said, "Man," he said, "first, I just want to say thank you." He said, "A lot of people hit me up, want to know what can I do for them." He said, "But nobody is ever reaching out trying to do something for me."
Hmm.
So he said, "I just want to say thank you so much for that." So that started a conversation and a relationship that we've been able to have. And so this past year, I've been able to do a lot of his content here as of late, just when guys get signed and stuff like that. And so now I consider him a friend.
Yeah.
And so but anyways, yeah, at the end of the day, man, that's what it's about, is just trying to give as much value as possible. And I think if you do that, I think people can see that you have a love there, and they want to know, where does that love come from? And that's where you get to be able to them get to know you as a Christian. So I know it's kind
Yeah.
of a long-winded answer, but
Well,
hopefully that helps.
yeah, no, that's great. A lot of good stuff there. And I really, I mean, obviously the overlying just thought that if you reach out and you help, seemingly wanting nothing in return, that does make a difference to people. On in all different levels of life, whether it be ministry or even professionally, it makes a difference when you reach out just to help. And I like to, going back to what you talked about, how maybe churches can get involved with their communities through sports. You're saying doesn't have to be a formal program that your church operates necessarily. You don't,
Absolutely.
if you're able to, great. But, like we said, most churches probably don't have the facilities for that, the people for
Right.
that. But, I love your example of just going and finding, I did. And since I started to share my story about my low moment in sports, I'll tell you about one of my high moments. I did that
Let's
one
go.
time when I was in Lancaster, and that is the only time I have ever made a full court shot. I literally just took the ball and I just threw it and swish. And those kids thought
Man.
I was the
Oh
man.
yeah.
It was before Steph Curry, so this was unprecedented. Anyway, so
That's awesome.
that's I had to share that one, because I've also been ejected from softball games, so I've had good and bad moments. But anyways, well, Joey, there's really a lot more we could talk about, but I know we're kind of running low on time here, and so maybe we'll have you back on sometime to talk even more about this. But I think you've given a lot of good insight, a lot of good thoughts about how we can. I like how we went from, you can use media to promote sports, and then you can use sports in obviously your school, but even your church, to reach out to your community and reveal character, build character. A lot of good stuff we've talked about here. Any closing thoughts here as we kind of round out the conversation?
No, man, I just want to say thanks for letting me come on. I appreciate it. I appreciate your friendship and love everything you're doing and helping bring value to all these churches and stuff, man. So it's huge. I know that the Lord's using you, and so I just appreciate you. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to reach more and more people for Him. Um, and anything that we can do to try to impact them and the talents that God has given us, that's to me what it's all about.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any questions for sports media stuff, I'd definitely be willing to point them in the right direction as far as what's worked for us. And mainly it's just learning from other people, like you said.
Mhm.
So
Well, no, thanks for those kind words. And then also, though, with that in mind, my last thing is like I said, we'll throw some links in the description in the show notes. But for those that don't take the time to actually look at those, what's the best way for people to connect with you in terms of maybe a website, Instagram, email, something like that?
gotcha. So email, it would just be joeyvmedia@gmail.com. And then, probably Facebook is probably the easiest. My name's Joey
Okay.
Vara. Just look me up on Facebook. And then Instagram, if they want to go to Instagram, probably my main one would be Joey Vara Designs. And
Okay.
that's just, send me a message, and, we can get the conversation going and go from there.
Okay,
So,
good deal. Well, like I said, we'll throw those ways to connect with you in our show notes here. Joey, thanks again for joining us, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
yeah, man, thank you so much.
Well, thanks again for joining us for this episode. I do hope that if you haven't yet, you will subscribe to our YouTube channel and that you will follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps when you leave us a 5-star review and when you tell others about the podcast. So please do that, and we would be so grateful. Of course, if you want to connect with me and learn more about what we can do for churches through churchmediahq.com or through other organizations through Creative Team Pro, you can find all of that information at mustincrease.com. Well, thanks so much again for being a part of our audience and for checking out this episode. And we look forward to seeing you next time as we continue to increase truth and inspire hope right here on the Must Increase podcast.